Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Monster Hunter World. More specifically, we're going to be talking about advanced Gunlance techniques. And what I mean by that is I'm going to be talking about techniques that I didn't cover in my Gunlance tips video. Now, in case you guys haven't watched that specific video, there should be an annotation popping up on the right-hand corner of the screen where you guys can click on that and you can go check that video out, because I'm not going to be going over all of the basics of the Gunlance in this video. I'm going to be focusing on some specific attacks and some specific topics, so you should make sure that you understand the basic functioning of the Gunlance before you watch this video. I'll also put a link in the description of this video so that you guys can go check it out in case annotations aren't working for you for whatever reason. So there you go, just letting guys know ahead of time. Now, let's get started. The very first thing that I want to tackle is the Royal Burst. And the reason I want to tackle this is because I mentioned in my Gunlance build video that I constantly switch out Gunlances depending on the situation that is presented to me, which probably sounds sensible and was exactly what I was doing. However, this past week I've been doing extensive testing on elemental damage, and my results were disappointing to say the least. Basically, when it comes to Gunlance, there's almost no reason not to use the Royal Burst in pretty much every situation you can think of. And that is just really disappointing, because I've always been someone who likes crafting the different weapons to align myself with the different elemental weaknesses of my targets. But currently, as it stands in Monster Hunter World, the elemental damage is just incredibly lackluster, and you really need to make specific builds that take advantage of elemental damage, which is why I did a build for Charged Blade that took advantage of elemental damage to provide you with a different playstyle. But unfortunately, it is not nearly as viable when it comes to the Gunlance. So basically, long story short, if you're getting started on the Gunlance, or if you're someone who's been playing Gunlance for quite some time, basically try out the Royal Burst, and most likely that is going to be the Gunlance that you will be using throughout most of your experience at this point, because there really isn't any reason to use any other Gunlance. Now, don't get me wrong, you can get certain Gunlances to outperform the Royal Burst in specific situations. Like, for instance, if you have a monster that is extremely weak to fire, and you have the Blue Chariot Gunlance, and on top of it you add a bunch of fire gems, and you really tweak out your set to take full advantage of the Blue Chariot, sure, it's going to do a little bit more damage than the Royal Burst. But ultimately, the Royal Burst might just come out on top on the sheer nature of poisoning the target alone, which is insane for me to even think about, but that's just the way it is. And overall, for most other situations, you don't even have to put in half of the effort to get the same results by using Royal Burst. It is quite simply above and beyond all of the other Gunlances. And at this point, some of you guys might be thinking, but how is that possible, and why is that the case? Well, quite simply, this Gunlance has positive affinity, has 437 raw damage, which is considerable. It's got poison, so it will poison your targets, which will deal damage over time. And on top of it, it has the best shelling in the game. It's got normal shelling level 4. There's only one other Gunlance in the tree that has shelling level 4, and that is the Magdalahat, which is essentially Zora Magdaros' Gunlance. But even that one has long shelling instead of normal shelling, which means that for the most powerful combo that the Gunlance can do, which is a Slam Burst combo that I will be getting into shortly after this particular point, for that particular combo, the Royal Burst is still going to be better, and the sharpness on the Magdalahat is terrible. And I do mean friggin' terrible, atrocious. I don't even know if you can get it out of green, because I can't even be bothered with that goddamn Gunlance. That's how bad it is. And it is the only other Gunlance in the tree that has level 4 shelling. So you guys are probably getting the point. If you don't understand what shelling is how powerful the shots of your Gunlance are, the shots, explosions, whatever you want to call them. And level 4 is the highest possible level, and like I said, only 2 Gunlances have that, the Royal Burst being one of them. And the difference between normal and long is that normal has more shells, therefore it's going to deal more damage whenever you do the Slam Burst combo. You guys will understand why once I start explaining how the full burst combo works. Basically, too long, didn't read. use Royal Burst if you're using gun lances, unless you really have a deeper understanding of elemental damage, okay? Just use Royal Burst. Trust me, it's good for everything. The only place where Royal Burst is going to be somewhat weak is Zora Magdaros, okay? The next thing I want to talk about is quick reload, because I did show you guys quick reload in the previous video, but I didn't emphasize how important it actually was. So basically you can do a quick reload by pressing R2 and circle anywhere in the middle of an animation. So the regular reload looks something like this. R2, circle. This is your regular reload. Now, if I am in the middle of an attack and I do that, this is a quick reload. Now, the important thing about the quick reload is that it only reloads your shells. It doesn't really reload your worm stake. So, for instance, if we go like this, and we use our worm stake, and now I do one attack and do a quick reload, notice that we have all of our shells, but we still don't have the worm stake. In order to reload the worm stake, you're going to have to do a manual long reload, okay? So keep that in mind. So why is the quick reload so important? Because there is a combo that I wasn't even aware of at the time because I was too busy enjoying the game, since the Gunlance video was like one of my first videos. I wasn't really aware that this was a pretty potent combo that you could do. And essentially that combo is, if you go into slam like I told you, which is triangle circle, right? Triangle circle into triangle and then burst. I told you guys about this combo. The difference is, when I told you about this combo, I told you to go from this into the worm stake cannon. So, slam, burst, triangle for the wide sweep, and then triangle again to stick the worm stake cannon in. Okay, I showed you guys this combo in the previous video, but there is a more powerful combo that you can do, because you can basically transform it into an infinite combo if, instead of going after the worm stake cannon, you actually go for a quick reload after the wide sweep animation. So, triangle circle, into triangle, into circle for the full burst, into triangle again for the wide sweep, into the quick reload with R2 and circle. Now, the benefit of doing this is that you get all of your shells back, and from the quick reload animation, if you press triangle circle again, you're going to go straight into another slam. So basically the way it goes is I'm going to be saying all of the buttons of the combo. Hopefully you guys will be able to understand it. And you can also see it go right next to where it says Gunlance on the top left-hand side. All of the buttons that I will be pressing will be showing up, but I will say them out loud anyway. So triangle circle, into circle for the full burst, into triangle again for the wide sweep, R2 circle for the quick reload, triangle circle again, circle, triangle, R2 circle, triangle circle, circle, triangle, R2 circle, triangle circle. You guys get the idea. You can basically rotate this combo forever, and it is most definitely one of the best sources of damage for the Gunlance. Now, the particularity of this particular combo is that it is very ineffective if you are doing it with a wide shelling type Gunlance, because the wide shelling is going to have at most 3 shells if you have a capacity boost skill, and by default it only has 2 shells. So therefore, you see these little explosions that came off at the tip there? All those 29s, those are 6 times 29 because we have 6 shells. If you're doing this with a wide type Gunlance, the most you're going to be getting is 3 numbers. And to top that off, it also receives a negative bonus because the wide shelling type just doesn't like doing full burst. So it's actually going to do less damage than regular shells, okay? So keep that in mind. So you can do this with wide gun lances, just like you can do this with long gun lances. And to be completely honest, I find it to be particularly effective with long gun lances as well. However, not even close to as effective as it is for the normal gun lances, because you simply have more shells, which means it's going to deal more damage than any of the other ones. However, having said that, there's also 2 pretty big melee hits on this particular combo in the form of the overhead smash and the wide sweep, which means if your gun lance has a high amount of raw damage, you can still get away with doing this combo. It just probably doesn't pay off as much to do full burst. Now, in my opinion, if you are using a long gun lance, I still do the full burst, but if you're using a wide gun lance, you definitely shouldn't. Instead, you can skip the full burst part and do a quick reload at the end of the animation to cycle back into the melee attacks. So, triangle circle, into triangle, into triangle again, into quick reload, into triangle circle, into triangle, into reload, and you guys get the picture. Now, the problem with this particular combo is that if you're going to be playing a Gunlance like that, then you're not really taking that much advantage of its shelling capabilities. And if that is the case, you probably shouldn't be running with skills like artillery or capacity boost because it is not going to be worth your time. Now, I've actually done a build for that specific playstyle. I call it the boom hammer because it's essentially more of a hammer than necessarily a Gunlance in my opinion. And I use Nergi's Gunlance for that because it's got one of the highest raw damages of the Gunlance tree, and it's just basically a crap ton of damage that you can do by just doing melee hits. But for the purpose of that build, I completely got rid of artillery as well as capacity boost and just went full out melee attack skills. And you know, it works. I killed Nergigante like that, but again, I don't feel like that's much of a Gunlance playstyle, you know? Another thing I feel I didn't emphasize enough in my previous video was the side hops, the frontal hops, and the back hops with the Gunlance. Now, what I told you guys in that video was whenever you guys need to reposition yourselves in the battlefield, just press R1, sheath your weapon, reposition yourselves, and press triangle. And in a lot of situations, that is correct. However, how are you going to handle it if the monster is applying pressure on you? Because some of the later monsters in the game are going to be quite deadly, and they might even be able to one-shot you the second you go for that sheathing animation. So what are you guys going to do about that stuff? Well, essentially, keep your weapons and instead use the little hops that you can do with a Gunlance to reposition. So say for instance you're attacking a monster, you move slightly to the right. You can press X and right and your character will dodge in that direction. However, he will only strafe if you are in the middle of a combo. So you can do this and then strafe left, or you can do this and then strafe right. Or I would have strafed right if the pull wasn't in my way. Basically, you can do an attack strafe right, you can do another attack strafe right again. But basically, you need to follow attacks, or you need to follow at least one hop after an attack, so you can actually strafe left twice if you want to, like that. And that is important because this is going to allow you to reposition yourselves. You can also do it backwards if you have to. And it's pretty damn useful in the middle of the fight to just, oh, gotta reposition myself a little bit, or maybe the monster moves a little bit ahead of you. Hop forward a little bit, and you know, just hopping around is particularly useful. It also allows you to get out of animations a little bit faster, so you know, instead of letting this animation play out all the way like that and then moving away slowly, you can do this and like, oh crap, we gotta reposition, instantly press it, it'll move you faster out of the animation, okay? Or, oh snap, mistake, gotta reposition, you know? So it is very important to make use of these hops while your weapon is still out, particularly if the monster is applying pressure on you. You can't afford to remove your weapon because in the time it takes you to remove your weapon, you might just get killed. And this is one of the reasons why I think a lot of people think that the Gunlance is so unwieldy, because it is so slow for you to move when you have your weapon out, but you have to adapt your playstyle with these little hops off to the side, okay? So keep that in mind. So at the start of this video, I told you guys that there is one Gunlance that is far and above better than all the other Gunlances in the Gunlance tree. Does that mean that it is the only viable Gunlance? No. You can play with other Gunlances, and as a matter of fact, I would actually encourage you guys to check out some different playstyles that you can actually go about and do with the different shelling types of Gunlances. For instance, the Gunlance that I have equipped right here is a wide Gunlance. Now, the important thing is that you should switch your playstyle depending on the Gunlance you are playing with. And specifically for wide Gunlances, I consider that change to be quite significant. Now, you guys might be wondering, can I do the Slam Burst combo with a wide Gunlance? Yes, you can, but you probably shouldn't, and here's why. So if you shoot a regular shell with a wide Gunlance, notice the damage. 45 damage. So this Gunlance is able to deal 45 damage per shell. Therefore, you guys will probably say, okay, so if you do full burst, which essentially consists of you unloading all of your shells at the end of a move, that means you're going to deal 45 damage times 3, because you have 3 shells on that wide Gunlance, right? Wrong. Here's what's going to happen. You only do 4 damage, and that is because the wide Gunlances are not particularly suitable for full burst. So like I said, this is still going to be effective. It is still dealing damage, and ultimately anything that deals damage can kill monsters, you know? It's just not the most effective way. In my opinion, the most effective combo for you to do with a wide type Gunlance is spam triangle, and at the end of the combo, hit circle, and then keep going. So, triangle, 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 shell, triangle, 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 shell, triangle, 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 shell, triangle, 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 quick reload, triangle, 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 shell. You guys get the idea, right? This, in my opinion, is the best way to deal damage with the white type Gunlance. Doesn't mean that it is the only way. You can certainly introduce a couple of more variety in your combo, but I think this is going to be the best bang for your buck. Now, say for instance you're hitting some monster weak part, because for whatever reason, it just so happens that you're in a position where you're hitting a monster weak part. Now, there's also something else that you can do with this specific Gunlance, because the thing about shelling is that it doesn't matter where you hit in the monster. Like a Baroth's forehead, full damage. The legs of a Rathalos, full damage. You know, other armored bits on other monsters like the wings of a Kushala Daora, full damage. Doesn't matter where you hit with a shell, it always deals for full damage. And since this is the best Gunlance for actual regular shelling, which is just using your circle attack, what you can do if you want to hit on weak spots of monsters and still deal all the damage that you can do with a shell is you can spam circle twice, then go into a poke, then circle again, quick reload, and then circle twice again, and you can basically spam shells. So here's how it goes. Circle, circle, poke, circle, quick reload, circle, circle, poke, circle, quick reload, circle, circle, poke, quick reload, circle, circle, and you're going to be dealing quite a bit of damage. Now, the important thing is, as you've noticed, we were pushed back quite a bit. So in order to maintain yourself in position, what you want to do is you want to start poking a little bit more. So, for instance, you want to go circle, circle, poke, poke, circle, quick reload, poke, circle, circle, quick reload, circle, circle, poke. You know? Basically, you want to alternate the pokes in between to stay in range of your target. It's going to take quite a bit of practice, which is why I personally don't use this, but I would incentivize you that if you want to try it out, don't let anyone stop you just because something is better than something else at dealing more damage and so on. Doesn't mean that this is not a valuable playstyle, and it doesn't mean that this doesn't bring something different to the table, because like I said, you can be hitting weak spots of monsters for quite a bit of damage repeatedly instead of relying on the burst combo where you have to be hitting soft spots in order to really be effective. Okay, so what about long gun lances? Well, with the long gun lances, in my opinion, the slam burst combo is actually viable because you're still going to be dealing considerable damage. Now, the gun lance that I'm using right here is the Magdalahat, which is the other gun lance that also has level 4 shelling. Like I said, I don't actually like this gun lance all that much because it doesn't have very good sharpness. It usually stays in the green. I'm actually not sure if you can level this past green because I've never stacked that much handicraft. But doing the slam burst combo with this gun lance is most definitely viable because look at the damage. 43 per hit. Okay, so that's still a considerable amount of shelling damage on the slam burst combo. Now, this particular build that I have right here is not particularly good for the slam burst combo because, as you can see, we're not dealing that much melee damage. And that is because I did this specific build for a different playstyle altogether. So there is something called charged shells, which I told you guys about in my previous video. So after any combo, you can hold down circle and your character is going to shoot a charged shell, like so. And you can see that that did quite a bit of damage, and it was also pretty fast. Now, this particular build takes advantage of that specific feature because it uses focus. Now, focus is going to shorten the amount of time it takes for you to charge your shells. And if you are playing with a long shelling type gun lance, you might consider focus for your build if you want to. I'm not saying you have to. As a matter of fact, this particular build that I did, it was more so a troll kind of thing, but it does kind of work. It's just I don't really like that specific playstyle all that much. But ultimately, the point of this specific build is to get the monster into a position where I can just spam charged shells. So like that. Shell, charged shell, charged shell, charged shell, quick reload, charge Chell, charge Chell, charge Chell. And you guys are like, so what's the advantage of that? Well, the advantage is that once again, doesn't matter where I hit him, it's going to be those 88 damage. Whether I hit him in the face, whether I hit him in some armored spot like a Baroth's forehead, or the horns of a Diablos, the horns of a Nergigante, makes no difference. It is 88 damage, always. Because that's just, you know, it's true damage. There's no armor, no resistances, no nothing. It's just flat damage that there's no way for them to avoid. I've actually done a video that I put on Twitter. I actually don't have that particular video anymore. But if I do, I might put it in this video so that you guys can see. But essentially, I took down a Nergigante from nearly full health to nothing by just doing this. Now, the reason I was able to pull that off is because of Part Breaker. And using this with Part Breaker essentially put the Nergigante in a state where he was just like constantly falling over himself because I broke one horn, then I broke one leg, then I broke his chest, then I broke another horn. So it's like, it's one of those things like you can do fun, quirky things with a build like this, but I wouldn't necessarily say it is a very viable playstyle. In my opinion, if you're using long gun lances, sure, you can fire off the odd charge shell here and there, but I would probably still go for the slam burst combo in most situations because it does comparable damage to the royal burst. But anyway, that's pretty much all I wanted to touch upon when it comes to the Gunlance. I just kind of felt like since you guys asked me to main the Gunlance in my first video, I kind of felt like I still haven't put a more concise video explaining all of these different techniques that you can go about and work on. So here you go. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it's useful and hopefully you learned something. Let me know how you guys feel about it in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the... I was about to say I'll see you in the Gunlance, but I actually meant to say I'll see you in the next one. God damn.